We are a collaboration between the Department of Education, the Department of Human Services, and the Department of Public Health and Environment. And then we are the contractors. We are the Community Epidemiology and Program Evaluation Group, so CPEG, out of the University of Colorado. So I'm going to go over how our administration is done. So we have three different surveys. We have 2 high school surveys and 1 middle school. The high school survey has a base, about 60 questions that are base questions, and then questions are then added, different questions are added on to the 2 different surveys so we can collect more data without having a survey that gets too long. And then we have a middle school survey, which is 71 questions. From there, we then select a school sample. So what we do is, here at UCD, is we do a random sample of the state for the district and the schools, so that way we can have representative data both for the state and then. And then the next step is recruiting districts and schools to participate. We then communicate with in-school coordinators and then administer the survey. We typically assign one person at the school or district level to be the survey coordinator, and they're the ones that actually administer the survey and have all the communications with us and tell us how many kids are in each class and things like that. So in terms of selecting the schools, like I said, both a middle school and high school free, which includes charter schools. They're all by health statistics, and then schools and classes randomly. I'm getting a little. Can you guys hear me? Janelle, can you hear me?
Yeah, if somebody could just mute your line and make sure that it's all muted. We are getting a little feedback. Thank you, guys.
We also survey alternative high schools statewide, and there were 12 that were randomly selected. I should have explained this earlier, but the Healthy Kids Colorado survey is the youth behavior survey for our state. So the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is a national survey that's been going on for over 20 years. So we incorporate those questions into our survey, and then we ask a few more. So that's how that works. And the CDC then selected 40 middle schools and 40 high schools to be in their sample. And I guess just for future reference, last year we had a different sample to represent our state and then what CDC wanted, but we had permission this year to make it at the same sample, so that will make it a lot more simple for schools. The next step is school recruitment, and initially we send letters to districts and schools and make phone calls to superintendents, and then some schools or districts require applications, which we submit. And then as soon as we get the AOA from districts, we then contact each school to either the principal or the designee, and we identify a school coordinator. Oftentimes, some of our smoothest efforts working in the schools is we work through community partners who are already working in the schools and are interested in the data, and they assist us in working with the schools and then the actual administration itself. So here's just some of our communication we have with the coordinators as soon as they're selected. We first decide on when we should administer the survey. We try to avoid surveying near holidays, around Fridays or Mondays. That way hopefully we can get a higher response rate and more students are in attendance that day. Then we obtain class lists and randomly select classes from that list. And then throughout the process we provide training and any sort of assistance the survey coordinator needs to get the surveys administered. So for 2013, survey administration was done in the fall from August 2013, and then just a few schools from one district rolled into January 2014. Now I'm going to talk about how the data is prepared and then analyzed after we've received it. So the surveys are on a Scantron. So the surveys are sent back to us and scanned, and then any errors or inconsistencies are edited. We do similar edits to what the CDC does for their YRBS survey, and then we prepare weights and they're constructed to represent all students in Colorado schools for each of the 3 frames. So I think the best way to describe weights for those of you who aren't super as familiar with statistics is, for example, if you have a school with maybe a significant number more boys than girls, we can construct a weight so that we can compare the two, and the fact that the numbers are different can be adjusted for. So the weights also account for sampling design, and then the school and student, what their participation rate is, and then also how many of the students don't actually respond to the survey, and then overall adjustments by grade, sex, race, and ethnicity. I should also mention this survey is completely anonymous. The students don't put their name on it at all, so that's part of the non-response. Some students will choose not to respond. And then we construct our variables. So here's a slide showing what our response rate looks like. We have a pretty good response rate for middle school and high school. It's a little bit lower for alternative high schools. For the most part, we really try to have schools, if possible, participate doing passive consent instead of active. Anytime we have a school that wants to do active consent, which means students need to bring a form back signed by their parents saying that they can participate, our response rate really does go a lot lower, as opposed to passive, where something's sent home, but parents only need to send something back signed if they want their student not to participate. So those are just some of the challenges we face in getting a high response rate. So in terms of the analysis, we do a state to a national comparison, so looking at the YRBS data compared to our state data. And then we do comparisons, you'll see as I get into the data slides, within Colorado. So we looked a lot at male versus female, and then also in 2013 was the first time we added a question on self-identification. So this is a YRBS question that has also been recently added. So it just asks students to identify if they identify with gay, lesbian, bisexual, or if they're heterosexual. So we have some really interesting statistics on that, which are coming up. And then we also looked at comparisons by race and ethnicity. The prevalence is presented for the selected indicators, and then I will show you on here we have some graphs that compare and show statistical significance, and that just, this next point just explains how we calculated that. Now we'll go into some of our data. First of all, here's the demographics of the high school survey sample. So you can see just how many students were surveyed. As you can see, we had it's a pretty large sample of students, which we're very proud of, and we actually are hoping to even have higher numbers this 2015, which will make our data even more, have our data have more power. So now we're getting into our data slides. We ask a question, or we ask each student about their height and weight at the beginning of the survey, just self-reported, and then we calculate a BMI for each student. And here are the results for the high schoolers. As you can see, Colorado is statistically significantly less than the national average by quite a bit, which is something to be proud of for sure. And then there's also a statistical significance between males and females. And then the gay, lesbian, bisexual population is about almost twice that of heterosexual students to be obese or overweight. And then this is next showing the percent of high school students who smoked cigarettes in the past 30 days. Once again, if you compare our Colorado to a national average, we're statistically significantly less, which is fantastic. But we do have some really staggering numbers when it comes to the GLB population, it being twice the national average. Next slide is showing the percent of high school students who drink alcohol in the past 30 days. We're just slightly statistically significantly under the national average for Colorado. But once again, the GLB population is quite a bit more than even the national average. And then this is showing the percent of high school students who use marijuana in the past 30 days. This is a really interesting slide, and I'm super excited to get our data back in 2015 to see if anything has changed since the legalization of marijuana. But for now, we can see, which is fascinating to me, that Colorado is quite below the national average. So it'll be interesting to get our data back this year and see where we're at compared to the national average again. Again, looking at the GLB population, once again, almost twice as much as the national average for marijuana use. Now, marijuana use is one of the topic-specific reports published by the health department, so I'm going to go over a little bit more about some more findings they had as they looked more deeply into the data. One thing I thought was interesting, once again, this was before the this survey was taken before the legalization of marijuana for recreational use, which the hope is that it won't impact adolescents because you have to be 21 or over to purchase it. But this is something I think is interesting, that over half of the students think that marijuana is either easy or very easy to access. More than half also think that it's harmful, which is wonderful. Overall, 86% think that their parents feel that it is wrong or very wrong to use marijuana. I think this will also be an interesting statistic to see if something has changed in terms of perception of students since legalization. And then about 1/3 think that the police would catch kids who use marijuana in the student's neighborhood. This next comparison compared students' support and then marijuana usage. So we found that students who felt that they have someone who they could go to for help with a serious problem had significantly lower rates of current marijuana use. So I think some of the most interesting statistics we see are protective factors. So it's showing that students who have someone they could go to if they had a problem are less likely to use marijuana at significantly lower rates. This next slide is showing us how adolescents are accessing marijuana. For the huge majority, they're accessing it by someone giving it to them, a small amount taking it from a family member, and then a small amount got it at school. This is also showing what types of marijuana the adolescents are using. Once again, this is before legalization, so it'll be interesting to see if any of this changes. But 85% smoked it, and 5% ate it, and then 6.2% used a vaporizer. This next question is asking about prescription drug use without a prescription. Once again, as a state, we're doing fairly well compared to the national average. But once again, our GLB population is more than double our state average and almost double the national average, which is quite staggering. This is showing the percent of high school students who have been in a physical fight in the past 12 months. So Colorado, once again, a little below, but still statistically significantly less than national. Males, I'm sure this isn't a surprise, but males are quite a bit more, statistically significantly more than females. And then once again, the GLB population is at a higher risk for being in a fight compared to their heterosexual peers. This is showing the percent of high school students who attempted suicide in the past 12 months. Colorado is a little bit less, but I think out of this slide we see that the GLB population is more than 4 times the amount of our state, which is I think quite alarming. This is showing the percent of high school students who had sex in the past 3 months. The national average is at 34%, so about 1/3, and then Colorado is statistically significantly less at 23%, and then passing up the national average, the GLB population has a much higher risk for that. So I talked a little bit about this question earlier, but this is showing the percent of high school students who have someone to go to if they have a serious problem. We had compared this with marijuana. And the national survey doesn't ask this question. The YRBS, this must be a healthy kids question, which is why I don't have a national comparison. But the Colorado, females, males, heterosexual are all pretty close in that statistic, and then about 20% less or a little bit less than that are GLB population. One of the other reports put out by the health department was on the GLB statistics, and I decided to talk a little bit about some of their protective factors, especially some of them. These include some of the more staggering statistics. So they found that when LGB students had someone to talk to or go to for help, they were significantly less likely to have attempted suicide or been electronically bullied in the past 12 months. So I think in terms of school programming, this is a really interesting statistic in terms of providing support, and this isn't just schools, this is their families, their friends, and how that can have a significant impact on their emotional health and bullying. LGBT high school students who felt safe at school were also significantly less likely to have attempted suicide in the past 12 months, or to be current smokers, or to have been bullied in school or electronically. So this is really interesting, this question about, I think the question asks if you feel safe at school or to or from school, and how important it is for all students, but particularly for the LGB students, to feel safe when they're at school, and how that really affects other parts of their behavior. LGB high school students who participated in extracurricular activities were significantly less likely to have attempted suicide or to be current cigarette smokers. So once again, this is showing not only is the need for a support network vital to them having healthier behaviors, but also them being active in school and being in participating is a great protective factor as well. So now we're going to go through some more adolescent health data, but this time it will be broken down by race and ethnicity. I also think these are super interesting to see which populations are a little bit more at risk for certain health behaviors than others. So first of all, this is showing the percent of high school students who identified themselves as gay, lesbian, or bisexual. No statistical significances here, but there's quite a bit of difference in terms of who identified with the GLB question. So this question is showing the percent of Colorado high school students who went hungry sometimes, most of the time or always, because of lack of food at home. I think this would be an interesting question to pair with the free and school lunch programs and things like that, to see if we're kind of helping and capturing the people that need it. So this is showing the percent of Colorado high school students who smoked cigarettes during the last 30 days. I will give a little bit of background to this information. So as you can imagine, the American Indian population is a little bit smaller than all the rest of these. So we purposely oversample that in certain schools so we can get a representative data for that region. So that way you have a little bit of that background in terms of these staggering numbers among American Indians. I also think, so as we'll go through, there are definitely some patterns between higher risk behaviors with American Indians, and then on the opposite side of that, you'll find that the Asian population, for the most part, is a lot less, which I think is really interesting cultural differences. This is showing the percent of high school students who used alcohol in the past 30 days. I think this is a really good indicator. We also ask about if they've ever had alcohol, but I think the past 30 days really gives us a sense of students who didn't have a drink one time and then never did it again, as opposed to students who maybe are doing it more regularly. So once again, you can see that the American Indian is slightly higher in this one, but pretty close to, I guess it's actually a little bit less than Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and then white Hispanic. And then one thing I think is so interesting is the Asian group is about half of the total, which is really fascinating. This is showing the percent of Colorado students who use marijuana in the past 30 days. Also, which is similar to the cigarette smoking statistics, is the American Indians are the highest group in terms of marijuana use and cigarette use, and then the Asian group is one of the lowest, which is really interesting. This one's showing that same question we looked at earlier about taking a prescription drug without a prescription at least one or more times during their life. And they have similar patterns to some of the other drug usage and alcohol. So this is showing the percent of high school student drivers who either had texted or emailed while driving on one or more of the past 30 days. I think this is a really important topic and something that I think we'll continue to deal with this age group. Once again, the highest risk of students is American Indians. I also think it's pretty staggering to see that of the total population of all of our students, over 1/3 of them are doing this while they're driving, which is quite risky. This is the percent of Colorado high school students who've ever been electronically bullied during the past 12 months, and I think this is really interesting compared to some of the other questions. The Hawaiian and Pacific Islander category is one of the highest for this one, which is interesting. So this is showing the percent of Colorado high school students who attempted suicide during the past year. Also, American Indians are a pretty high risk group for this issue, with the Asian and whites at some of the lower end to the spectrum. This is showing the percent of students high school students that felt that most of the courses in school were either very or quite stimulating or interesting, with a total of about 1/3. So I think that's pretty good. The students think that their school courses are very or quite stimulating or interesting. With American Indians and Asians at kind of the top, which is interesting. This is showing the percentage of students who felt that what they were learning in school is going to be important to them in later life. So the total is about 45%, and then with the highest, the Asian question, or the Asian choice, was 59.6. Now, compared to all those other questions, I'm thinking that it's going to be useful then in later life, or if they found their courses if they found their courses interesting or very interesting. Now most of them across the board think that's important to finish high school, which is an interesting perception, which is great. Then this is the percent of Colorado high school students who thought it was important to go to college. Once again, it kind of does not really match up with what they're learning in school is important to later life. So I think it's kind of interesting that for the majority, a very large majority of students think it's important to graduate from high school and go to college. However, they feel the percentages of them thinking that what they're learning is valuable is a lot less. So now I'm just going to go through some of the way that you can access more data. So like I mentioned earlier, we have quite a robust data set with tons of questions and tons of way to analyze. I did some kind of cross-tabs with the marijuana and the LGB topics, where you can look and see how different questions in the survey can relate to one another and whether they're a protective factor or not. So there really is just so many ways to look at this data, and so I'm going to talk about how you can access it and use it in your respective positions and and projects. So one thing we've published is our executive summary, which is just actually will include a lot of what I talked about today, which is for the high school students. And that's available on our website and on the health department's website. Now here's an example of what the health department's website looks like. If you go to adolescent health data and then you go down to the data tab, you can choose to look at overall state data, and I believe this next slide is the regional data. So let's see, maybe not. But we also have options to look at the data by region, which is really interesting to compare each region, and especially for those of you working in specific areas, you can find your region. We are divided into health statistics regions here in the state. And if you go to our website, which I think I have all this contact at the end, then you can see which region you're in, and then you can kind of go back to this and find out what your data looks like. So here are the links to accessing the data. The first one is just that last page. And then another option you have, if you're interested, like I said, we have the questions also posted on there. So if there's some crosstabs you want to do, because the data that you'd look at looks kind of like this, we can definitely do that. And if it's a state level or regional level data, this is giving you the link to request what you're interested in. And then if anyone on the phone works specifically with school districts or schools, you can just contact me if you're interested in further school level data or a different way to compare it or things like that. We just need permission from your respective school or district to do that. And here are our next steps. We're providing support and putting the data into action, which I think is one of my favorite parts of my position. Part of my role is to work with schools and districts and either explaining their data to them or often doing presentations and telling them what their data means. So that's one of our roles. Our next survey administration will be this fall of 2015. So we had some great things happen for us this year. We're recipients of the Marijuana Tax Fund, which has allowed us, and normally schools could only participate if they were selected in the state sample, but with the Marijuana Tax Fund, we now have the funding available for any school to participate if they are interested. So initially we will contact schools who are in the sample, but then any school, if they aren't in the sample or not selected, can also participate with that tax fund money. So we're grateful to be a part of that, be one of the recipients. And then, like I said, we'll continue to sample by state and region to have representative data. So if you have any questions, I'm Hillary Morris. My contact information is at the bottom. Our contact at the health department, so any questions relating to them would go to Sarah Nichols. And then our principal investigator is Ashley Brooks Russell. So you can contact them there. So now we have some time to go over any questions you might have for me. And you can either just ask them over the phone or type them in the chat box. I'll just wait a couple minutes to see if we have any questions. Also, I'm not sure if anyone else can see this, but it looks like there's more slides after mine. These are not my slides, so don't be confused. Yeah, I'll just wait a minute more or so if there's any questions. If not, we'll wrap up after that.
I was wondering how you asked the gender question and if you captured the transgendered population at all.
So we did not ask transgender. That's something that, so the question that we added last year for the gay, lesbian, bisexual population was recommended to use by the CDC's YRBS. And we've had quite a few requests this year to include transgender either in that question or as a separate question. However, the CDC said they haven't quite nailed down the right way to ask it or where to put it. So we're actually still finalizing the instrument for this year, so it's kind of still up in the air whether or not that will be added or where it will be added. From a public health perspective and from a professional perspective, I definitely see the need to add it, just because the numbers are so staggering. I think it would be interesting to see if we split that out by if we included transgender. However, some of the issues we run into in terms of getting schools to participate is schools not wanting to ask, or already maybe some schools are already very not very happy about our sex questions. So we actually have some schools who receive what we call a virgin survey, where we black out all the sex questions. So we just have some more conservative areas where recruiting them and getting data from them might become more difficult if we were to add transgender. So I wish I had an answer for you right now, but we should have an answer in the next few weeks in terms of if it's decided to have that added on or not. Any other questions? Okay, well, I just wanted to thank everyone for listening in today, and I hope that this data can either help you in your programs or you can help other people use it. Like I said, it's part of what my responsibility is and part of our role here at UC Denver is to make sure that this data is being utilized, because it really is quite robust and we recognize it can help so many different programs throughout the state that deal with adolescent health issues. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Hillary, for presenting today. It was really good. And just a quick reminder, I will be sending out that survey for those of you who are requesting CHES or MCHES credits. All right? Any other final questions before we go? Okay, I think we're all done. Thanks, Hillary.
Hi, thanks, Janelle. Have a good one.
Yes, you too.
Thank you.